El Vergel, Roman villa. In the village of San Pedro del Arroyo in Ávila, the Greek myth of Meleager has remained hidden for centuries. Meleager was the son of Althea and Aeneas, king of Calydon. When he was born, the Moirai prophesied that his fate would be linked to an ember that was burning on the hearth. If the ember was consumed, he would die. His mother doused the ember and stowed it away carefully in a trunk. Meleager led the hunt for the infamous Calydonian boar, a dangerous animal which was sent by the goddess Artemis after King Aeneas had offended her by not making an offering to her. Among other hunters from Arcadia who took part in the hunt were Meleager's uncles and Atalanta, an expert huntress that Meleager was in love with. The other hunters were angered by the fact that a woman was taking part. Atalanta was the first to wound the animal, and Meleager killed it and offered its hide to her, thereby offending his uncles who claimed the trophy. Enraged, Meleager killed them, precipitating a tragedy. This story forms a part of the remains of a Roman villa that we know today as El Vergel. It is depicted on one of the most beautiful mosaics that decorate its floors and that has been rediscovered after many years of neglect.
Archaeological discoveries in the vicinity of San Pedro del Arroyo date back to the early 20th century, but it was in the year 2005 when, due to the cemetery being extended, the mysteries of the Roman villa began to be uncovered. Since 2006, and promoted by the provincial government of Ávila, the owners of the village, several excavations have been carried out. These excavations, overseen by the firm Foramen Archaeology, have revealed structures and lavish mosaics which correspond to a 3rd and 4th century courtly villa or country palace, which had its origins in an agricultural settlement in the 1st century. The villa is representative of the group of Roman villas in the center of the Duero River region, some fine examples of which are Santa Cruz at Baños de Valdeorados in Burgos, Olmeda and Tejada in Palencia, Almenara de Ajada and Porres in Valladolid, and Orpheus at Camazana de Terra in Zamora. These were all agricultural settlements that gradually became rural palatial complexes, surrounded by rustic buildings which represented the wealth and culture of their owners.
The remains that have been discovered have enabled us to develop a theory of the villa as we think it might have been at the height of its splendor. The domestic area was arranged around a great rectangular porticoed space called a peristyle and overlooked by the rooms of the house. Access was gained on the eastern side via a passage or a portal, which led to one of the connecting corridors and from which the courtyard garden could be seen, with a large rectangular pond in the center. The remains indicate the presence of another mixtilinear pond, perhaps an nymphemium featuring statue, which demonstrates the economic and cultural standing of the family. The main rooms were located on the northern side and connected by a porticoed corridor featuring lavish mosaics. This entire wing receives sunlight from the south and thus is comfortable in the winter. The central axis of the mosaic in the hallway indicates the location of the main room, the triclinium, a room dedicated to banquets where the Roman family would entertain their guests with a meal and conversation. The kitchen and annex rooms were probably located on the left. However, a Roman family could not manage without a room which was characteristic of their culture, the baths. These occupied a large part of the western wing. The remains that have been excavated enable us to identify the different areas of the baths. A changing room, known as the apoditarium, led to an exercise room known as the palastra, which was connected to a cold water bath called the frigidarium. This led to the hot rooms, the tepidarium and the caldarium. These spaces had an underfloor heating system and also housed a small pool, which was also heated from below. Additionally, the villa had service and storerooms, probably in the southern wing. The floors of the porticos and the main rooms were covered in vividly colored mosaics, which in most cases consisted of characteristic geometric patterns. In some mosaics, figurative motifs of nature or hunting scenes appear, such as the Meleager mosaic, which is framed by animal and plant designs, or the Petrich mosaic at the entrance to the triclinium. The villa was used until the 5th century, although it suffered modifications and extensions, including buildings of a religious nature. Later, during the 6th and 7th centuries, the Hispania Visigoths turned it into a necropolis. Its use as a religious and burial site continued through the ages. In the Middle Ages, the St. Peter the Apostle parish church was built on this site, and later still a cemetery. Underneath these, a part of this succession of archaeological remains is still buried.
The villa was declared a cultural interest asset in 2016, and work began to adapt the site to open it to the public. This project is promoted by the provincial government of Ávila and the Castile and León regional government's culture and tourism department, and involves an architectural project carried out by the Architecture, Heritage and Cultural Landscape Laboratory at the University of Valladolid. This is an innovative and sustainable project which is being carried out in stages and uses pavilions that protect one or several spaces containing the mosaics and which are linked to a walkway that allows visitors to retrace a route along the villa's portico. It is a neutral architectural design which serves the needs of the archaeological remains and maintains a permanent dialogue with the surrounding landscape. 2 pavilions have been constructed so far. The reception pavilion contains part of the bathing rooms with 2 geometric mosaics and an exterior pool. The Meleager pavilion covers the entire original space occupied by the triclinium. The central scene of the mosaic is inverted because it was intended to be viewed from the back of the room, where the diners would have been seated. The partial rebuilding of the most relevant walls, as well as the recreation of the contour of the peristyle and the central pond, help us to understand the original layout of the villa, despite the disappearance of almost all of the building structures. The designs of several mosaics, which after being excavated have been covered up and are awaiting restoration, have been reproduced on canvas. After the 2 pavilions were built, restoration work began on several of the mosaics. The Meleager mosaic and the 2 mosaics in the bathing area. This painstaking task, which has been carried out by a team of experts from Vergel, allows the viewer to appreciate the value, quality and artistry of the ancient mosaics.
Let us return to the story of Meleager. On hearing of the death of her brothers at the hands of her son, Althea was overcome with rage and fetched the charred ember that she had kept hidden for years. She threw the ember onto the fire, and as it was consumed, Meleager died, thereby meeting his fate. On coming to her senses, Althea was unable to bear the feeling of guilt and perished. The central scene depicted on the Meleager mosaic synthesizes the triumph and tragic end of the young hero, as told by the mythological narrative retrieved by the ancient owners of the Roman villa of El Vergel. Today, it is exhibited as part of an ongoing project to recover the history and original identity of the village of San Pedro del Arroyo. All of this constitutes an important cultural legacy, which must be preserved for future generations to learn about and enjoy.